just like the Twin Towers, but it is not. It is an acknowledged explosion. We'll be comparing it to the Twin Towers. Let's focus on controlled demolition first. We have hundreds of examples of controlled demolition from all across the country from which to make our comparison to Building 7. Because it's the most commonly used method to bring high-rise buildings down or demolish them. This is what a high-rise looks like when it's being demolished. Controlled demolitions can be engineered in many different ways. Normally, the purpose of a controlled demolition is to remove a structure while avoiding damage to adjacent structures, and to do so economically. Typically, a tall building is demolished by placing thousands of cutter charges adjacent to columns and beams throughout the building, and then detonating them in precise order, starting with the interior structure and then progressing outward and upward, synchronistically timed floor by floor. Destroying the interior columns allows the unsupported weight to pull the exterior inward, and destroying the building from the ground up allows the weight of the building to be harnessed to do much of the destruction. The result is an implosion, producing a vertical collapse at free fall speed into a consolidated rubble pile, which is broken up and ready for loading and shipment. This is what we see in all three of the World Trade Center high-rise buildings, and we'll take a close look. Now, this is a feat that only a handful of companies in the world can accomplish. And we're told that fire accomplished exactly this for the first time ever on 9/11. So what are the typical features of these of controlled demolitions? Well, we have direct evidence of explosives, starting with sounds produced by explosions, rapid onset of destruction at the base, dust clouds, thick, billowing, and enormous, pulverized concrete. We have evidence of cutter charges. We have squibs, or explosive cutter charges, visible at the upper floors, demolition waves which remove column support, and a total collapse of the steel skeleton, broken up and ready for shipment. In addition to this direct evidence, well, the result of all of this is a straight down symmetrical collapse into the building's footprint, because all columns are cut on a floor at once, synchronistically timed, resulting in a free fall speed of collapse. So we'll be comparing these features to Building 7 right away here, one by one. In addition, we have no typical characteristics of destruction by fire: the large, slow deformations, the creeping from place to place, the asymmetrical collapse of any structure that is destroyed by fire. But also, we have government documentation, which we'll be looking at in the case of Building 7, expert corroboration. Do controlled demolition experts say that this was a controlled demolition in the case of Building 7? Do we have foreknowledge of the collapse? Well, we always know when controlled demolitions, they're planned months in advance. Turns out in Building 7, we'll be finding foreknowledge. We have plenty of video documentation, all of which goes to support the hypothesis of controlled demolition, which turns out to be quite easy. So let's see if Building 7 has any of these features. Well, Building 7 is this tall, 47-story skyscraper. How many of you have never heard of Building 7? Usually there's a whole bunch of people. Most of Americans have not. It's 47 stories. It was never hit by an airplane. It suffered some damage by the North Tower when it came down. And we'll see what happened to it. It's about a football field length away from the North Tower on the other side of Building 6. You can see Building 7 here in the aftermath after the Twin Tower, North Tower came down. So here's the building in its pristine condition and then being pelted during the collapse of the North Tower. We'll be taking a look at all of this dust coming up in a moment. Now here we have a shadow of this building on Building 7. Remember, 47 stories, so don't get confused by the shadow line above the fires. There are 2 or 3 fairly small fires, which is the only graphic evidence we have of fires in this building. There's smoke on the other side, and there's some dispute whether that was part of the Building 7 on fire or another building behind it. So we have 2 small fires, never hit by a plane, random damage from the Twin Towers. So let's march our way through the evidence here, and you can follow along in your handout to see where we are and how we're doing. Let's take a look at CBS video and listen to Dan Rather.
What you're seeing are high shots. Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself.
Describe that.
Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the 3rd time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
I want to show you this again because I want to refer your attention to the penthouse, which falls first, indicating core column
damage. What you're seeing are high shots. Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself.
Describe that.
Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the 3rd time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Even Dan can pick up the obvious comparison to controlled demolition. Let's take a look at the NBC, and he never repeated that statement again, by the way. How does this happen? We have 24 core and 57 perimeter columns around this building. What could make all 81 of these columns fail simultaneously so that the building would collapse straight down, rapidly, symmetrically, in 6.5 seconds? How is that possible? Since the small fires and the damaged columns were only on one side, we're told by NIST and FEMA that the columns were damaged on this side. We're looking at the other side. Wouldn't we expect, for instance, if I broke my leg and I was going to toward the injury, that the building would do the same? No. The only way to do this is to take out all the columns at once. Now, this is an unusual building. It was built over a Con Edison substation, so there were some large spans spanning across the Con Edison, some trusses, cantilevered beams, and so forth, which would make it even more vulnerable if one of those supporting elements, the column or a truss, were to go down in a fire, which, remember, is not all the way around the building uniformly, heating all those columns up at once. No, the building would fall over, favor one side. Let's take a look finally at the north side on West Street. Okay, now, watch this. What do you see in the upper right corner? Anybody? You see 4 explosions. We're going to be taking a close look at those. There's no fire engulfing this building. There is no fire alleged to have been on those upper floors either. Watch them. Okay, we'll take a closer. Coming right up. Do we have sounds and sights of explosions in Building 7? Let's listen to an interview with this emergency worker.
We were watching the building actually because it was on fire. The bottom floors of the building were on fire, and we heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was, it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out, and it was horrifying. Then, about a second later, the bottom floor caves out. And the building followed after that, and we saw the building crash down all the way to the ground.